Holly Talbott with Limburg TV, and today I'm going to show you how to make a flatbread. What we're going to do is we're going to make a crust, and then we're also going to make a topping. The topping that I chose for today is onions and red peppers, so we're going to saute those up. And first I'm going to put the crust together because it does need to rest about 30 minutes after we put it together. There's a couple of kinds of crust that you can do with a flatbread. The one we're doing today is kind of more like a pie crust, a pastry crust. You can also make them when they're a little more firm, more like a cracker. There's different types. So this is a very nice one. I think you'll like this one as well. So there's all different types of things you can try. First off, we're going to make the crust. We're going to take the flour. I always want to measure the flour for you. Always remember that you never pack flour. You're going to spoon it lightly in. We're going to use 2 cups of flour. That's why I have this giant measuring cup. These are very handy to have. Okay, and then you're just going to level it off. If you pack flour, you'll get way more flour than the recipe writer intended. And then whatever you're making is going to be too dry. So we're going to put the flour. We're going to add some cornmeal. And the cornmeal is going to make it a little bit crispier, and I love the way that comes out. We're going to have a little sugar, a teaspoon and a half of sugar, and a teaspoon of salt, okay? So we're going to have all those things and mix them together. You always want to mix this together first before you start adding. We're going to then add butter, and we're going to add some ice water. You want to mix this together first, otherwise you're going to get a pocket of one of the ingredients, and you don't want to do that. Okay, next I'm going to get the butter. It's very important when you're doing pastry that you keep the ingredients cold. So this is cold butter, and we're going to use half of it at a time here. So you want to keep it very cold, because what happens is when you work it into the dough and you make your dough and you roll it out, you have these little tiny pieces of butter. When it goes into a hot oven, the butter melts and it puffs up, it creates steam and puffs up, and that's what gives you flaky. So that's what you want to do. You want to use the cold butter. So we're just going to put about half of the butter in at a time. The first time you could just eyeball half of it. First time we're just going to coat it. We're going to just make this a little smaller than the next round. But this is a pastry blender, great thing to have. Makes it much easier to cut it together. They used to say use 2 knives, and if you can figure that out, you're a better man than I, because I can't do that. But the pastry blender works great. So you're trying to get the flour incorporated fully with the butter. It's kind of get like a coarse meal look. Now we're just going to add the rest of the butter. I love to use these paper plates because they just make cleanup a lot easier. Okay, now I'm going to coat them again first. See there. They're getting a little more incorporated. Now the thing that you're going to want to do is use your hands. This is the fun part. But you take the little butter pieces and you're kind of combining them this way. You don't have to do it like this. You can continue with the pastry blender and then use the rubber spatula and stir it a little bit, but you'll be missing a lot of fun, because this is a fun part. And it just feels great, and you can just really easily feel any pieces of butter that are still really large. So I'm just flattening them a little bit and combining them with the flour. At this point, sometimes with a crust, I'll do something a little bit different. I'll put a little fresh pepper in it. You can put some herbs in it, chop up some fine herbs and mix them in it. It gives your crust a little kind of a difference. Even just chopped parsley would be great in here. So there's all kinds of things. This recipe also, you're going to be able to take it, and your imagination is the only thing in your way. You'll just imagine anything you want you can put on top of this. I know there's restaurants that have just such a wide variety, and they change things from season to season. So there's like a lot of different things you can do with this. Okay, so now I think it's pretty well combined. I'm just gonna go wash my hands and then I'm gonna come back and we'll do our next step. Okay, so now we're gonna add some of the water. I'm just gonna add, I've got a half cup of water. I'm just not gonna quite add all of it. I'm gonna toss it around a little bit. Flour is a funny thing, it absorbs more or less liquid depending on the weather and kind of all different kinds of circumstances, how it's been stored, where it's been stored, that kind of thing. So we're gonna just mix this together. You can see it's gonna need a little bit more. You can see now it's like holding together a little bit. You can see that it's a little bit. I'm going to turn it out onto the board. I don't want to get stuck on my hands. So just going to work it together. You just want to see that it's going to hold together. And what we're going to do, we're going to cut it in half. If you just wanted one strip, I would do 4 of these. Cut them in 4s. But we're going to cut it and make 2 long rectangles. And just shape it a little bit. You want them about a ½ an inch thick. Okay. You can make these a day ahead if you want, and then they'll be ready to go, chilled and ready to go. They do need, anytime you have a dough like this, you're going to need to have it rest about 30 minutes to kind of let the gluten in the flour relax a little bit. So this is what we've got. And now we're just going to wrap these up, and we're going to put them in the refrigerator for 30 minutes. Okay, now we're ready to move into sauteing the onions with the red peppers. Okay, this red pepper is enormous, so I'm not going to use the whole thing. The recipe will call for 1 red pepper, so sit it on the flat side and then just cut straight down, and then this is your garbage. Okay, so what we're going to do is put it skin side down. And we're just going to cut, actually, you know what, I want them a little thinner than I started, so. Now let's see what this looks like. I'm going to cut these in half because they're going to be a little bit too long when they're on top of the flatbread. I'm going to put them in with the onions. They're going to cook about the same amount of time as the onions, so I can cook them together. You've got a root end and a stem end. We're going to take off the stem end. Then we're going to put it on the flat side. I'm going to actually just trim the root end a little bit. And we are going to take it off because of the way we're going to cut them. I'm going to cut them down again on the flat side. I'm going to cut 2 little slits like this. And you just want to take off any of the dry skin you're going to take off. Now, there's 2 ways to cut the onion. I decided for this, I want them in strips that are going to stay together a little bit. If you cut it opposite the grain, what they'll do is they'll fall apart a little bit more when you're caramelizing them. And I don't want them to fall apart too much. So what I'm going to do here is I am going to get rid of the root end. And then I'm just going to cut strips. Let me get over here. You got to change your grip a little bit. Okay, so we're going to go over here. I put butter and olive oil together. I'm going to turn on the heat. Just going to heat the pan for a second. And I have 2 tablespoons of butter and 2 tablespoons of olive oil. You can use all olive oil if you like. I like the taste of the butter in this, so I'm going to put that in, but it's up to you what you want to do with that. that noise is preheating the oven. I'm preheating the oven to 400 degrees because I'm using a convection oven. This recipe, you can do it 425 on a standard oven or 400 on a convection oven. I like most baking with a convection oven, so that's what I'm using today. You just always have to remember that you turn your oven down 25 degrees when you use convection. Okay, so we're going to get these going. I'm going to nurse them a little bit, so I have the heat a little higher. I'm going to put some salt and pepper on them. Always use fresh pepper. Pepper loses its flavor immediately once it's ground, so when you buy the stuff in the can that's been ground for years, it's not as flavorful. So try to always use a fresh pepper. There's different types of pepper milk. This one is great for in the kitchen. Good. Salt. You do this according to your own taste. Now these are going to take probably about 15 or 20 minutes. Okay, here's fresh thyme. Just a word about, this is a cute little herb saver I bought, but if you don't have that, you can use something really simple. Use a coffee mug, put a tiny bit of water in the bottom, fresh cut the stems on the herbs when you get them home, sit them in that and put a Ziploc bag over the top. And actually, you know, those little grocery bags from my vegetables work really nicely because they're nice and light and you can tuck it underneath. They keep so much longer if you take good care of them. And I know if you're like me, what happens is you buy fresh herbs and you want it for one thing and then you don't want them again for another 2 weeks and then you go to get them and they're gone. This little technique will keep them for a couple of weeks easily. So I'm just using the leaves of the thyme, a teaspoon or so. Alright, so we're back to the onions, and I just wanted you to see, they're getting a little bit dry, and they're not quite finished. I can still feel they're still crisp. So at this point, you could even add a little bit of wine if you want. You want to add some kind of liquid. I'm going to add like a little bit of water, and then I'm going to let that cook down, and that'll help to keep them from burning. I don't want them to burn. So we'll just keep watching them, stirring them, and they're starting to get soft, but they're not there yet. I think this is it. Look, they're nice and brown. Oops, lost one. I'm going to stir them. I'm going to turn them off now. I'm scraping up those brown bits in the bottom because that's a lot of flavor in there. And I don't want to, I could deglaze and really get that up by putting a little bit more water in there, but I don't really want any more moisture in here because I want these dry at this point. So I got the heat off. I'm going to put these in a bowl so they can cool faster. You know, they were not going to cool that fast in this pan. I'm just going to spread them a little bit so they can, that's nice. So they can cool. And now we're going to go and we're going to make our crust. All right, so now I have the crust that we made. I'm going to take it out. This is going to make 2, okay? So we've got this rectangle right here. I'm going to cut it in half. And I'm going to use a little bench flour. Just a little bit up there for extra. And when you're rolling out a pie crust, any kind of crust like this, you're going to try to match the flour on the surface to the flour on the rolling pin. Okay, so I'm going to take this. If you have done this way ahead and it's really, really cold, you may have to work it a little to make it more malleable. But this seems to be perfect and easy to work with at this point. So what we're going to do, we're going to take it and you roll towards you and away. And every time you roll, every other time, you can kind of make sure that there's enough flour underneath. Okay, we're going to go for a rectangle. You just play it by ear how often you have to move it, because you don't want it to stick to the surface, because we're going to have to relocate this. Just let me show you this. It's not even that we really need it, but like, see this little place, say I really hated that, which I don't, but the way to seal your, if you have a rip or whatever, take your finger, just wet it a little bit, and then you could put another piece of crust right over it and it'll stick. So that way you can patch, so you don't have to worry if something is falling apart. You can easily patch it. Let's see what we got here. We have, that looks like 14, and that looks like 5. 14 by 5 is what we're asking for. Now, it doesn't have to be perfect. You don't want it perfect, because it's boring. Perfect is boring. What we're going to do is take our... Now, I chose these dark sheet pans. These are cookie sheets. If you have dark ones, you have to remember you're also going to turn it down 25 degrees. Sometimes you actually turn it down 50 degrees that way. If you're using convection and a dark pan, I am just going to watch it. I'm going to stick with my 25 degrees down, and I'm going to watch it really carefully and make sure that it doesn't overbrown. But these dark pans are going to give us a crispier bottom crust. Okay, so that's the one. I'm going to roll out another one. So I'm going to keep the other two in my freezer and make them another time, and I can do a different topping or whatever. So when you're making this, if you're making this at home, you can make your onions, you can make your crusts, you can even make your crusts, lay another piece of parchment, make the other crust, stack them up, and chill them before you're ready to actually bake them. So that's a stage to go to. If you're going to leave them very long, make sure you get the plastic over it so it doesn't dry out. But you can stop at this stage and then finish them, say, an hour before your guests come. You can get them set up ready to go in the oven. Now we're just going to, kind of the trick is not to overload these, like I was saying. You want to make them have enough but not too much. See, we're going to go about 1 inch from the side, because we're going to fold that in a little bit. Now again, what we're going to do, let me start from here so you can see what I'm doing. I'm going to put it up just a little bit, turn it up just a little bit. You don't want to put anything really wet in here. If you do, make sure your sheet pan has sides to it, so because you'll run out. Now we're going to take a fork, just put in a little flour so it doesn't stick. I'm just going to make little fork marks all around here. It's totally up to you if you want to do this. Kind of finishes the edge. Very relaxing to do something like this. Now, if you're bringing this to somebody's house, you could bring it just like this and pop it in their oven if they're going to have oven space. That's great. Now then, one more thing we're going to do. We're going to take an egg. You can use an egg yolk with a little water, an egg white with a little water. We're going to use the whole egg here. Beat it a little bit. And then we're just going to brush the edges. And that's just going to give it a little shine. You can actually skip this step if you want. It just kind of finishes it off. There you have it. We're going to bake it now for about 20 minutes until it's nice and browned and golden brown on the outside. I'm going to put it in the lower part of the oven, not the bottom shelf, but like the lower middle of the oven. If you have two, you may have to, and you're not using convection, you may have to rotate them halfway through so that you, front to back, top to bottom kind of thing. So we're going to put it right here. I am going to rotate these front to back, okay? The other day, I don't think I really need to, but you can see the other day I had something that was not quite the same in the front and the back, so I'm just kind of rotating them. I think we got it. I added a couple of minutes. This looks nice. It's got a little crispy on the top here and there. Nice and golden brown. You see how the egg wash gives you a little bit of a shine. I'm going to bring these over here. If you want to cool them a few minutes on a rack, you could. But I think I'm going to serve mine right on a wooden board. You serve them any way you actually like. I have this plate. You could serve one on that plate. And a pizza wheel, look, see, I didn't make them quite perfectly the same. The pizza wheel is a great way to cut them. So if you don't have that, you could just use a really sharp knife. And you can cut them in small strips so people can pick up one. Or you can do, one on, a bigger piece on a plate. You can serve these however you like. They're yours. Just want to look at the bottom. See, the crust is nice. Crust is done. I don't think I would stack them. Whoops, see, that one's a little bit, that one broke in half, so I'm not going to put that one on. I don't think I would stack them too much because they are a little soft. And there you have it. A roasted red pepper and onion flatbread. Bon appetit.